Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight on the show, our second The Influencer conversation is with Sun Mobility. The name Chetan Maini is familiar to anyone who is associated with the mobility and transport industry here in India. He really is the person who kicked off the entire green vehicle revolution here in the country. I spoke to him about his second venture, Sun Mobility, the future of mobility and transportation here in India, as well as his advice for entrepreneurs looking at innovating in this space. Take a listen to this interview. Thank you so much for speaking with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, Chetan. It's exciting to talk to someone who has triggered this entire wave that we see of mobility and the e-revolution in the mobility space. So thanks for being here on the show. Let me start by talking about what you're doing at Sun Mobility, and just to give our viewers a background really of your association with the e-vehicle space here in India.
So I started working in electric vehicles over 20 years ago. And the whole idea of started off traveling on solar cars across the US and Australia, and the idea that you could power the entire mobility solution using pure renewable energy and electric mobility, to me was very exciting. And that led to starting Reva in 1995, and we launched it in India in 2001 and sold the product in over 24 countries. And then in 2010, Mahindra came on board. So it's been a 20-year journey on electric mobility. And what I was trying to reflect back is that while everything seems so right, electric vehicles make so much sense from a pollution, from an energy perspective, from a cost perspective, why aren't they really taking off? And I felt that while technology had really advanced, we still had a few challenges. One was that all the battery prices were coming down. The cost of electric vehicles was still very high. The second was range anxiety. It was both a combination of a psychological issue that someone has, I have limited range, and two, if you put a lot of batteries, it became very, very expensive. And the third was around refueling time. Today, regular charging takes 5 to 8 hours. Fast charging could take an hour. But consumers are used to just 5 minutes of refueling. Anything beyond that seemed like eternity. So the idea was, unless we fundamentally address these three issues, it won't work. So Sun Mobility that we formed was saying, how do we fix this? And if we separated batteries from vehicles, we could now get all forms of vehicles, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, buses, to be cost neutral. If we swap batteries in a couple of minutes, we could actually now enable the whole range anxiety to go away and the long refueling time, right? And we could actually do this where the cost per kilometer is cheaper. And if fundamentally you gave consumers an option where there was no performance change, in fact better performance, and costs for less, right? Then the move to green is almost immediate. And that could create a sustainable impact. So that's been the heart of starting Sun Mobility.
I want to pick up on what you just said and talk about the fact that you bet on the electric vehicle space here in India at a time when no one was talking about it. What perhaps helped you decide that yes, this was going to be a big market in India, and yes, this was a market or an area or a business where you could make money?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, the journey started, racing solar cars. And so it was more of a passion first to say that this is the future. But in the early 1990s, oil price was $20 a barrel. And nobody cared two hoots about climate change. But I felt deep down that in the next 10 to 15 years, that is going to be the largest shift. And so for me personally, I started to say, how do I put a space into this area? So maybe Reva was a little too early, it's ahead of its time. But if I reflect back, those experiences allowed us to do something today at Sun Mobility they couldn't have. So maybe it wasn't the right time. It wasn't, the time was still okay. It's just that the fact is that today, I think for the first time, many things are coming together. Oil prices are going up, hitting our current account. Climate change is being seen as a big issue. Technology has been changing rapidly. Consumers are saying we'd want new solutions. And so we've felt that right now the time frame for all of this is correct. Maybe 15 years ago, that wasn't as clear, but maybe it was for me in my mind and made me push this through.
Okay, I will talk also about the role that the government perhaps is playing when it comes to this industry. But let's talk about the work that you do with Microsoft, for instance. Run our viewers through some, details really of this association that you have with them.
Yeah. So as part of our entire solution, we have these smart batteries that have 3 onboard computers. We then have these quick interchange stations that swap them. And what connects everything to consumers and the network is our smart network. It allows us to plan where the infrastructure is. It's also allowing us to connect with all the batteries. It has consumer apps for payment gateways and allows us to optimize the system. It's a very complex network. So we wanted a platform that was very scalable. What if millions of users were on it tomorrow globally? How do we make something that's very scalable? How do we take telemetry data and use it to further add services for consumers? So our relationship with Microsoft was to use their platform, the Azure IoT platform, that allows us to build our smart network on and connect all our devices. It also allows us to use their edge computing technologies within our stations so that we can do a lot of processing there and connect them to our main cloud. So we wanted a partner that really was thinking of scale, understood platforms, since we're building a global platform, and we felt that this partnership between our 2 organizations really put our skill sets together to build something much larger.
Okay, you also have an association with Ashok Leyland, and that's far as the buses segment goes. Just walk us through that.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Ashok Leyland and us came together and to try to say, how do we transform mobility in cities on this area? And so Ashok Leyland has created the buses side, and we've created the batteries and the infrastructure. And in just a matter of 7 months, we showcased our solution at the auto show. And today the buses are undergoing trials. And later this year, we will be actually piloting them in cities on this area. And this is really interesting because one of our stations can do almost 300 swaps a day. Now imagine if you try to do the same thing with regular charging, you would almost have to have 150 stations. So we replace the infrastructure with a very small amount, which mimics consumers using regular IC engine infrastructure. And that's never happened before at a scale of a bus on this area.
I want to talk about the big picture. While it's great that the government does have this 2020 vision, a lot of critics are arguing that the infrastructure is not in place. For instance, for electric vehicles, the charging ports are still not available, and a lot of it, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, still needs to be imported into the country. Your comments really on what you would like to see as far as infrastructure in India is concerned. You were talking about buses, and you're saying, we're looking at this as a solution for the cities. If India is to become a fully clean energy country, our tier 3, tier 4, etc. also needs to come on board to these clean energy solutions. What needs to be done?
So I think that the role of government should be on setting a vision and having enablers to allow the industry to invest and build on this area, which means that today there should be an openness to look at different technologies. It shouldn't say it's A or B, but try different, be it slow charge, fast charge, swapping, all would have its place in society, right? So I think it's about being open about this. But the most important is setting its vision. If I look at what's happened in the renewable energy industry, it's set a vision of going, 100 gigawatts, right? Earlier, India's vision was 20 gigawatts by 2022. And by making this vision, we actually achieved the 20 gigawatts by 2018, 4 years ahead. With that came all the policies on energy, on everything. So India started to think and saying, can we go all electric by 2030? I think the larger vision should be in place on this area. The second, like I said, discussed with you, is that an openness on policies to say it's open for all technologies. And the third, from an infrastructure level, is government has a role to play there, but if it sets up the framework and creates actually demand, people will put up infrastructure, right? I'll give you a simple example. City of Bangalore recently announced that it will have 5,000 new electric autos, right? Now, all it had to do was saying it's going to give a permit for these areas. Now, suddenly you have solution providers saying, hey, we want to use electric autos. Drivers saying we'll be interested. Others saying we put in infrastructure. So maybe there are ways that they can create demand on a policy level and create a framework to allow industry to do this.
End this interview on a positive note. You're saying that there definitely is huge potential, and you're looking at 2030. If we are looking at that vision and we want to achieve that vision and that target, really, what needs to be done? What more needs to be done?
By 2030, India is going to have probably 350 million vehicles on its roads. we're also planning 260 gigawatts to 300 gigawatts of renewable energy. To put that in perspective, we could power every form of transportation by 2030 with renewable energy. So India has an opportunity in 13 years from today to completely run on clean energy produced in India, create millions of jobs with a new industry, and be a global leader. So, and at the same time, improving the lives of people. This to me is a huge, exciting journey. It's for the younger generation to say that we're doing things not that just make money, but we're going to change people's lives. And I'm really excited that we can be all part of this journey.
Wish you all the very best. Thank you so much for speaking with us, Chetan.
Thanks.
Thanks.